And maybe she did, but you're on 3 devices. Hold on. Yeah, let me try to send a request again. I'm also on 3 devices, and I've learned through trial and error that the only one that really works is my phone. Okay, I got a request from you again. Accept. Please accept. Add. Okay, it says it's adding. Okay, looks like we got it. I got a split screen. I'm also on 3 different devices, but okay, there you are. Beautiful.
It took a minute.
Okay,
Yeah, the cell phone. I did not see it on the iPad or the laptop option.
you're better than
And my
me.
phone is not very charged, so I'm holding it awkwardly for now while it's
Okay,
charging.
no, that's cool. Beautiful. Okay, it's crazy how all of this stuff works.
Yeah, well, at least I know some differences because I've tried it in the past with other people, and we
Mhm.
usually just give up and go on Zoom. So this is good to know a little bit. Let me double check something here real quick, though.
Yeah, please, because I'm also double checking something.
Ugh,
Mm,
sorry. Okay. Well,
no.
all right. Let me see if I can.
Yeah,
Yeah, hopefully my phone charges fast at least. That's so
yeah,
funny. I did not charge my phone, and I was like, oh, I'm not gonna need it.
I get it. For some reason my headphones aren't even working, so I don't know if there's an echo for everyone, but it's so
I don't
weird.
know.
I apologize.
I,
When I send you the video, you could always cut out the beginning. Oh, sorry.
yeah, that's
Did we
fine.
lose you? Okay. Oh, what up, Cliff? We got Cliff in the house. Okay. Okay. I, th I think we're good. Yo, Cliff, how's the audio? I hope it sounds okay. You sound good, Chelsey. Every time all the videos I listen to from you, you sound better than everyone else usually. So you got your stuff together.
Oh, nice. Well, I got a microphone, but honestly, I just got that recently, so I don't know. Maybe it's my laptop. I'm usually on Zoom when a lot of my recordings are coming from Zoom, so.
Yeah, maybe I appreciate. Okay, so I'm sorry. Let me give you a proper introduction, and I appreciate your time, and I don't want to waste any of your time. And if we could ever get the chance to do this again, because like one day I'll have my stuff together better than this, and maybe we could do a Zoom. My sound is not as loud as Chelsea's. Thank you, Dee Dee. I'll turn it up a little bit. How's that? I hope that's okay. Um, I hope that's not too loud. So there's just, there's so much to talk about. Like any one of these topics, you could spend a lifetime talking about. At least I can. And there's so many topics woven into dreams. So, and I know you're tired tonight, and I'm sorry that it's so late. This is my fault.
No, I had an active day with the kids too, and they're 4 and 5, so I was trying to keep up with them, and I was like, oh my God, I need to take a nap at some point. And we did Halloween stuff and went to the
Yeah,
beach, so I'm like, yeah, it was quite the day.
I get it. Yeah,
And
I
we woke
came
up
straight from work,
incredibly
and
early.
yeah, we did a Halloween thing too across the street there at the firehouse. So yeah, I get it with the kids, believe me.
I don't know.
And
I'm
I
not going to say
appreciate
I'm
you.
feeling old, but I cannot believe how much energy kids have compared to adults.
Right. Yeah, it's crazy. It's
Hmm.
insane. Dee Dee says hi, Chelsea. Nice to see you. I'm glad
Hi
you can.
guys, hi everybody. I see some of the comments, but it doesn't go that far. So you can read them out to me if anyone asks anything. Um,
Oh, trust me, I will. And I had even more technical issues. My big screen isn't working. That's where I usually read the comments from. So I might get up on the camera like this to see them, but we should be okay.
okay.
Uh,
Yeah, it sucks that they make you use like certain devices because like I have my tablet and I was trying on there and my laptop is what I prefer the most. So I'm like, it's just like kind of goofy. With Facebook's weird, so I usually avoid Facebook lives, but I'm glad I at least got on.
I get it. Believe me, I understand and I appreciate you. And like I said, next time maybe we could do a Zoom or a better, some sort of better method here. This is just all I've ever done yet. So
I know one chick, we do the Zoom, and she can stream it live through YouTube or Facebook. But I don't know, like I've never done it myself through the settings, so I have no idea.
yeah,
But I know it's possible.
do you pay for Zoom for your Zoom thing, like a subscription? Yeah. I
Yeah.
haven't found a way to do that without paying for it, and I've been very stubborn and pretty damn broke too. So like, but one day I will.
Again, I waited for the longest time, but when I started doing workshops, I was like, okay, I guess I need to kind of suck it up.
Yeah, yeah, I should have too. Okay, my sister said I'm hard to hear. I hope I don't understand this stuff.
I
Um,
can hear you just on all of my devices, so I don't
okay.
know if that's. I'm sure, I don't know. Maybe with the recording, it'll be okay, but it might just be weird with certain people's devices, maybe.
Yeah, it might be her. Who knows? Um, okay, see, I need to make sure I stay back here, I think. Oh, it's that couldn't. Okay, see.
See, I'm looking at my. I wish I could join on a laptop. It's so dumb.
I wish, trust me, I wish I had the streaming software so I could just do this all the right way. But we're here. Cliff, Dee Dee, how's the sound? Sister, how's the sound? Chelsey, Carly Cripps is my sister. She's always in the comments there. Uh,
Nice. Hi, Carly.
she's an artist. So Chelsey, you are. Dee Dee said she also doesn't hear me so good. I wonder how's this? Let me see what my sound is like.
This is my phone charging. It doesn't make any
I'm sorry.
sense.
Is the sound skipping in and out, or is it just not loud enough? Strange. Okay, you know what? Because I can't use the headphones anyway, I'm gonna do something real quick. Chelsey, I apologize.
No,
Uh,
you're fine. We'll figure it out. Get all your technology situated.
it's okay. Anyway, we're gonna try this. How's that, people? Is that any better? I hope that's better. Chelsey, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you perfectly fine, yeah.
Okay. Again, I like okay. I will cut out the beginning of this video for you, so it's not, it looks good for your YouTube. Um, yeah. Okay. Dee Dee, how is it now? Cliff, how we sounding? It's okay. All right. I'll live with okay. I got like 5 different mics and none of them work right, but whatever. Okay. Okay. So Chelsey, you are a dream analyst and author of Living Life Metaphorically. I still haven't had the chance to read that, but I will. I promise you I will. I did dive deep into your interviews, and I have a good idea of how you feel, but just so a lot of these people know where you're coming from, would you want to explain, like, briefly your usual rundown that you give of, like, how you break down the dreams into different sections and different layers and view them from the different perspectives?
Yeah. So I'll give like the little spiel. I usually start with my workshops, which is a tad bit longer. I won't go into too much detail, but because it
Whatever
gets
you want.
so I usually break them up into two categories. The first one being I call metaphorical, which would just be based off of your internal or emotional aspects and processing. I call that like your first layer of the subconscious or your more personable space. And I really enjoy the concept of internal family system. And I apply that a lot in dream analysis because it basically breaks your subconsciousness down into different aspects where you psychoanalyze yourself into different parts,
Hmm.
like your inner child, your masculine side, your feminine side, um, your ego. Then there's manifested parts throughout life, so that tends to have more than just the couple. But I also notice like your soul would account for one, or your higher self, um, and even your emotions will show up as internal parts too, right? Like your anger, or maybe if you're feeling sad, things like that. And they all kind of carry their own symbolism or symbolic language within your own personal symbolic realm of language. So so that was the first one. And then the second category would be the metaphysical. These are when you kind of walk out your front door and you experience other conscious aspects. But it's not always out the front door, really. Some of, like people can come into the other conscious aspects can come into your house and you can experience that either symbolically or very metaphysically.
Hmm.
So it gets pretty interesting. Um, those dreams can be a little bit unique, but and they stand out. You kind of know if you're experiencing something outside of your unconscious aspects,
Right.
um, and interacting with the universe a tad bit in various ways. Um, and when we do sessions, I like to track the patterns of symbolism on a large scale. So I say dreams are like tiny puzzle pieces that make a really large
I was
picture, right?
hoping
And
to say that. Otherwise, I was gonna say it. Yeah.
yeah,
Thank you.
it's really important because people always focus on one dream and like, I don't know what this dream means.
Hmm.
And you're like, okay, well, let's hear what's going on in the week's worth of dreams, or, like I always say, keep a dream journal. And when you look at it on a large scale, you really start to notice the patterns, the internal parts, the voices,
Hmm.
even preferences on symbolism. I've had some clients who like the one who's been with me the longest. I've noticed that his internal family system has color coded symbols. So like if we see like red or blue, purple, orange, yellow, green, they all have different parts. So like his masculine side's blue, his feminine side's red, his higher self is yellow, his inner child tends to lean towards green. And it might not always be obvious, but he'll notice it even in the daytime a tad bit too, which is kind of cool. So we like to
How did
track
you, I'm
patterns.
sorry, I'm sorry. I hate to interrupt you, but
You're
how
fine.
did you come to the conclusion? Were there more feminine aspects in the dreams that had those colors? Like, how did you make that connection?
Some of them are more obvious than others. The feminine side in this particular client was a little difficult, and it took probably a good 6 months of slowly. But because I keep copies of like session notes, and I try to write down the popular details. So we already knew with him we were color coding a little bit and looking for the signs. So when the red came up, we were like, "Oh, what is the red?" And we noticed, like he had like instances where like he was trying to enter like he in one dream he was mediate like a wedding planner, and both sides of the wedding parties were this feminine and masculine side, and he was acting as his main self trying to get it to come together. So like the bride's hair happened to be red, and then another time it was another redhead, so we started noticing that his
Okay.
feminine side kept appearing as a redhead, and not just as a redhead, it would show just signs of red randomly too.
That makes
Then we
sense.
noticed, yeah, so it's interesting. And then like the latest one we were trying to dissect and figure out, which took a minute. We probably spent a whole session just going through very random current dreams, but we always dig into past dreams too, if it'd be like 10 months ago or whatever,
Yeah,
right?
'cause they all
And we
connect.
noticed like, yeah, and we noticed his soul was coming out as purple, and that was a hard one. But it also, uh, we kind of knew that there was a missing colors because a few times he had dreams where he was seeing a kaleidoscope of colors, and they were all his colors, but there were a few that were not identified yet. And we're like, okay, well, we'll have to see how this goes. And like, like having a pet that he forgot to feed. or something like that, And I noticed I was like, oh, and then it just clicked, looking at the patterns, and I kept thinking, oh, feeding a pet. I was like, oh, feeding your soul, right? Like, and then we were looking at it on some of the deeper concepts and patterns, and I was like, oh, his soul is purple. Okay. Uh, and like it's not always that obvious because we're at that level, like we've been working together a long time, and we really had to dig around in his previous dreams for some of the missing pieces and to connect the dots on it. But it's really cool. So, and then he had some of them are very obvious, like the
Yeah.
inner child was obvious, and then his ego and his like shadow side at first were the first two with his intuition. So the intuition was a blue phoenix. So yeah, no, so the masculine side wasn't blue. The phoenix and his intuition ended up being blue, which was kind of cool. And it appeared as a phoenix several times. And then his ego and his shadow side were appearing as the wolves, which are cool. So he had the black wolf and the silver wolf.
Nice.
And sometimes it wasn't always a wolf. Sometimes it would be like a silver chain and something would be chained up, but it was in silver, like it was being locked up a little bit. So like it's all within the context of what's going on in the dream too. So it was
Right.
like it's a lot of fun to really dig deep into it and try to figure it out. So it's like a scavenger hunt a tad bit, it feels like sometimes,
Yeah.
or like a jigsaw puzzle.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're like Sherlock Holmes, but that highlights the importance of keeping a dream journal too, just for everyone out there watching. I think
Yeah,
that's
and
incredible.
like even the tiny little fragmented dreams that you don't think are important, they tend to fill in the gaps of bigger dreams or lead up into a bigger dream, and they do hold value. If it just be emotional processing, um, or even if it's emotional processing, you're still trying to figure out where that would be coming from. So like if it was triggering like your inner child or certain different aspects, they'll
Mm-hmm.
tend to appear in their own symbolic way. And so you'll be like, okay, it's my inner child that's upset right now, or it's
Mm-hmm.
affecting this part of myself. Um, it's a lot of fun.
It is. And that gives me another idea. I know there's ways, like there's audio and visual stimulation for dreams. They have like these dream masks you can wear that you put over your eyes that will flash different lights while you're sleeping, different colors and different patterns at different speeds. I wonder if like different colors would induce, well, obviously they would induce different types of dreams, but I wonder if like that's a way that someone might be able to induce a dream for their their masculine side or their feminine side, or maybe we could induce specific types of dreams based on that visual stimulation through lights. I don't know.
I don't. That would be interesting. I'm not sure, but I know you can do it through intention. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
uh, so
Right.
like I would say when we're trying to figure out a certain part and the person's becoming quite familiar with their dreams and everything, I'll say like, try to maybe meditate before you fall asleep or meditate into sleep and just be consciously aware and set attentions. And if you even think about it during the day, your subconsciousness will pick it up while it sleeps.
Right. And
And if it doesn't happen
write it
right away,
down.
just keep doing it and it will eventually do it.
Right, and that goes with everything when it comes to dreaming. For people that can't remember their dreams and people that can't lucid dream, it's that intention and that. But the thing about these masks, they're supposed to be like instant dream induction for people that struggle with it. And I've never used them. And obviously, I think the best way to do it is through hard work and over time. But the potential is there for people to just, listen to some binaural beats, put on one of these light masks and induce lucid dreams, when they would normally struggle with it.
I mean, it kind of makes sense. See, I wanted to get more into hypnosis someday because it kind of shows more of the function of the different realms of the subconscious.
Hmm.
So that kind of reminds me of something where they're trying to trigger a certain part of your brain or your subconsciousness that would pull out more.
Oh,
Uh,
it's exactly
but
what
it
that
wouldn't
is.
surprise me, honestly, that technology could do that.
Yeah, of course. And I mean the other way to do it, like you're saying, through intention and through a meditation, that's basically a self hypnosis, right? In a way.
Um,
Can be.
Maybe not a self-hypnosis, because from what I understand, hypnosis is when you've got like three different chambers, your consciousness, your subconsciousness, and there's a middle ground. And it's distracting your conscious aspects to override the middle to push the message or the symbolism into your subconscious and get the reaction without your kind of tricking your consciousness a little bit, from what I understand, a little, which doesn't always work for everybody, I've heard. But I don't know. There's a lot going on in the like. It's very interesting.
Very
I'm not like
complex.
the best or the most professional, but I would love to learn more about stuff like that myself,
Me
which
too.
probably would
The
help in the
hypnosis.
dream sessions. Yeah, there's some cool stuff out there.
I know some people are more suggestible than others and are more easily hypnotized than others. And
Yeah,
I feel like I mean I've had people try to hypnotize me twice and it didn't work. Doesn't mean that it doesn't work. I know it does. You know, it's there's plenty of scientific research. It's falsifiable and verifiable. It does work. But
yeah,
under certain conditions and you know, it's not that controllable. Just like dreaming and everything.
yeah.
Um,
And I could see how meditation would lead to that because I think when people do like when they willingly go to like hypnosis sessions, it feels like you are in like a deep state of meditation, but it's basically getting this conscious aspects to just kind of not turn off, but relax enough to allow the subconsciousness to take the platform, basically.
right, which
Uh,
could be a goal of meditation. I felt like I was hypnotized in certain meditative states, but I guess there is a difference, you know, like you said, that middle ground. But I don't know. I've never been hypnotized and felt that effect, but I've been, you know, I felt like I've hypnotized myself into certain dreams and things like that.
yeah,
So, I want to dive right in. When you there's first off, there's so much to talk about, and for everyone listening, all my people, especially Cliff, if I start talking too much, just like you know, throw like an angry face in the comments or something, and I'll stop. Tell me to shut up because I do, and I'm sorry, and I want to listen to you. People hear me ramble enough. So, but I want to ask you when when you speak metaphor and metaphorically and metaphysically, first off, where do you think thoughts exist? I know this is like a wild question, but I'm just curious to see what you would say. Like,
I would imagine.
I'm sorry, go
No,
ahead.
like your conscious thoughts or like uh, thoughts in general.
Thoughts in general.
I would imagine they exist in both realms. Like we consciously are thinking all the time, but your subconsciousness is always kind of in the background doing its thing too. So I'd imagine like there's probably a couple layers. That's a good question. I don't know how to answer that one, but I'm going off of just guessing on that one.
I
Because like your subconsciousness kind of will fight for the platform sometime, or it's always in the background doing its thing. So I'd imagine you're consciously creating thought, but like there's a lot going on there. So like I'm just thinking like this idea of huh, like you'll consciously be doing something, but sometimes your subconsciousness sneaks up on you and has a reaction that you're consciously not meaning to do, if that makes sense. So it feels like they're both kind of interacting, if you realize it or not.
right, right. I agree. So, do you somewhat subscribe to the Jungian belief of the collective unconscious? I'm sure. I mean, I'm sure you do in one way or another. So when we're pulling from, or you know, all of our unconscious thoughts function in this realm, wherever, whatever that may be, as I understand, right?
Yeah.
And okay, so there's that. Then I think of the Akashic records, which I know you're familiar with as well. Where, what dimension and exactly where do they exist? You know, like what what realm do they exist in? And do you think that the Akashic records could exist in the same membrane as the collective unconscious and maybe the collective conscious and these things may be obviously different different levels of frequencies, but are we pulling from the same collective body?
I think so. I was just reading a Rick Strassman book who actually literally talked about your question, and he was saying along the lines, and he even pulled out Carl Jung and archetypes and how it even gets into like quantum physics a little bit. But like, yeah, I think I couldn't tell you exactly which realm it comes from, but I do believe it comes from like a mass collective and like it's stored in there. But I've also noticed that it's within us too, or we have this little antenna called the pineal gland that can tap into it.
Right.
Like Rick Strassman talks about a lot of weird stuff. But yeah, I literally was just reading that, and I don't have the book near me.
I
So
mean, the idea comes from quantum physics, from non-locality, and like I mentioned it before, like last year they proved non-locality in testable and repeatable uh they had different various results, but it shows that a particle can exist in all states at once. And there's lots of theories that go back to, it even predates ancient Greece, where philosophers talk about if you're going down a road, there's a universe or a dimension where you turn right, there's a universe or a dimension where you turn left, and then there's the universe or dimension where you go straight. Any and all possible outcomes will already have and are happening. And the flow of life and time is just us tuning into these different frequencies, causing this stream of experience. But I feel like the only reason that those things can exist and that we can tap into them, like, I feel like that's even where memories would exist, is in this collective body, this unified body, and in quantum physics they call it the membrane. It's the membrane theory, or the M theory, they call it.
see, I hadn't heard it from that perspective, but and see, it was funny because I have a shamanic healing session tomorrow, and we were talking about prepping for some of that with myself, and like I remembered saying something about Doctor Strange to
Yeah.
her just jokingly a bit, and I was like, I want to be like Doctor Strange, like. And then I was reading the Rick Strassman book, and I like texted her, and I was like, the irony, it's just synchronatic, right? Synchronicity here. And then now you're asking it too, so I'm like, no, that's the third time I've heard that today. No, it definitely exists, and I think that like, and it's just funny because it sounds like it'd be like new concepts for us, but like shamanism has been talking about this idea of parallel, like the universe tapping in.
Right.
Where are we getting our information from necessarily on that like level? Or being able to tap into like your existence in other realms even
Hmm.
in like a parallel way. So I was like, yeah, it's kind of cool. It's been around a long time. It's just seeing like the quantum level kind of proving it in their own terminology too. And it's like,
Right.
it's like we're going full
It's always been
circle.
philosophical, but up until like the 1930s or so, it became scientific.
Yeah.
So, okay, so now this is where I wonder, like, when you use the term metaphorical or metaphysical, is that mainly for clarity? Because to me, even metaphorical dreams exist in a metaphysical realm, just meaning beyond the physical, you know? Now, I know what you mean, metaphorical, how it represents the family system, and they're literally speaking through metaphors. And then
Yeah.
metaphysical is outside of you, maybe interacting with external frequencies or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay,
I've
I just
noticed that
okay,
it can
okay.
come in. And I've noticed when the metaphysical like comes into your house kind of thing, they'll like
Mm,
be very metaphorical or
mm,
symbolic.
right.
So it's like there's almost kind of matching our subconscious language or trying to interact. But when we go outside of it, it gets very obvious and different in its own way.
Yeah, yeah, no, I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
For everyone listening, I think I put your website in the comments, so I hope people listening afterwards, especially in the replay and stuff on my page, can see that and go to it because her website's amazing.
I
um,
feel like a ADHD mess to me sometimes.
it can be a gift. Okay, so another thing I wanted to talk about a little bit. Also, I was listening to your interview with Jeff Randall, is his name, the Lucid Mage, I believe, or
Yeah,
something like
that
that. That was amazing. That
was a fun workshop. Yeah.
I mean, I loved all of them, especially the one with the guy with Freddy Krueger. But Jeff Randall, like I would love to talk to him. I would kill to talk to him because there's a lot of stuff I wanted to say to him.
Yeah, he's got really good tricks. He has way more advice and tips on how to work with the lucid dreaming than I do. I can sometimes only speak from my own experience on that one, but he's all over the place. He can give you like a million and one tips.
Yeah, yeah, that was impressive, honestly. That interview was impressive. So so recently I've been reading about different lab tests that they do about dreams, and I know you were talking about how you shared dreams with your son or something, how you knocked his Legos off the counter and then like he hit you and said you were bad.
Yeah, that was crazy actually.
Yeah, that these things fascinate me and this amazes me. And there's also, and it kind of ties in, I remember when you were talking to Jeff Randall there, how he was talking about out of body experiences and lucid dreams and the difference between them and how it's basically the same thing just in a different way.
Yeah.
I loved how he explained that because like I was ready for that and like I was gonna start leaving comments like I was like if he but he honestly he approached it and explained it so well. I really appreciated that because we've done different tests and I've talked to different people on these lives here, and I noticed how Jeff Randall said like that's his opinion and there's no way to verify it or whatever, but like, and I appreciate that he says that as a disclaimer, and I like to say those things too, but I do believe that there are ways to verify that, and I do believe it is testable, and I would like to test that. Like lab tests have shown, like like we were saying, up until the 1950s, even dreams weren't taken serious in the scientific field until REM sleep was discovered, and since then, scientists have done all types of incredible experiments to show that we can lucid dream and that we can, they can people can overcome phobias through dreams and you can improve your cognition and your problem solving through dreams. They've shown that through all types of interesting tests, and it's always really interesting how they test it. But
Yeah.
what they haven't shown through any of these tests is that people can share dreams, and they've tested it. And wanna, I would love, I would love to try to test it. I talked to someone on one of these lives once, named Theo, and he explained it really clearly, really well to me, and I believe him, and I believe you. But I would love to test it like that. That would be a major breakthrough if somebody could do that. And I'm just hoping like maybe at some point in the future, if you would be interested in testing that, or someone you know, maybe some people you know, if we can organize that, because that would be amazing.
That would be interesting because the only time I've experienced something like that was by accident, and I've seen like I had one client who was having like a lot of metaphysical dreams that were like negative, right?
Hmm.
But like he was sleeping next to his girlfriend at the time, and they both woke up at the same time, freaked out over the same dream, and they talked about it. And they're like, "Oh my God, you had that too?" So like that was a shared dream. And then
Wow.
I could vouch that when, like 5 a.m. one morning, my kid sleep with me, right? And I remember waking up, falling back to sleep, which is a good way to be lucid or extra, even out of body type of thing, right? You're very aware
Yeah.
and it's a good space. So I remember falling asleep, and it was almost like I fell into his dream because I like walked in and I felt like I wasn't really in control of what I was doing.
Right.
But I remember reacting to the Legos and knocking them off the table. And he yelled in the dream. He woke up, got mad at me, and hit me and told me I was a bad mom. I was like, well, that was real. That had a real reaction, and I remember it. And he didn't tell me about the dream. I just remember it went from the dream to real life. And it was just like the weirdest thing. So like I do believe that we're all consciously connected to one larger conscious aspect. Like the universe is conscious, and
I agree.
when you think of it like that, we are just a tiny piece of a very large brain. So like I could think like in that way that we would all be connected to one large conscious aspect. Um, People
I
have
agree.
out of body experiences a lot, and they will astral project to each other or interact with each other through something like that. So I'd imagine that's probably the same concept a little bit. But like, yeah, so I always say there's like a front door, and when you know how to use the front door, it gets kind of interesting.
Joe Armstrong said 10 minutes ago, so will we all have a piece of God inside of us? I think he was referring to like when we were talking about the dimensions and the, yeah, and yes, Joe Armstrong, I believe. I think when you're talking about the concept of infinity, infinite dimensions, that, I mean, there is no inside or outside. It is all one, so it's all inside and it's all outside, which is like a paradox, but that's like I think that's the paradox of reality that we live in. I believe God is the universe and we're a piece of the universe. So yes, you could say we have a piece of God inside of us. That's how I feel.
Yeah, that's kind of how I'm seeing it too. There's a lot going on with that, but like
Very,
it kind
very.
of goes along with the I am movement, which has been around for like a long time, not just
Yeah.
new age spirituality. They're kind of getting onto it again, but like it's the idea that we were, like made in God's image, but I think it's more or less that we do share the conscious aspect. So I always kind of refer to the pineal gland as like an antenna. I was like,
Right.
so yeah, there's a lot going on.
I like that. I know the frequency of the pineal gland is measurable from far distances too. And you can spike like an electroencephalograph, the EEG meters that they use to measure electromagnetic frequencies. You could spike those with your pineal gland. It's really interesting.
That is interesting. That is cool.
Hi Angela. Angela's here. Beautiful. Uh, okay, yeah, and there's also like, and just like um, particles can exist as waves or as particles interchangeably. I feel like that's reflected in everything, like the pineal gland, how it can emit a frequency that has an effect. But also, what has the effect on your body is the chemicals that it releases, the amino acids, the DMT, obviously, the proteins. It's
Melatonin.
right, yeah, melatonin, obviously, yeah, for the circadian rhythm and to help
Mhm.
control our sleep cycles. Yeah, there's so much to it. And a lot of mainstream science still resists the fact that it releases DMT and regulates DMT, but they accept the melatonin, but I feel like they're reluctant to admit the DMT part, even though there's been so many books written about it, and it's been tested and proven, but like mainstream science won't put it in their literature. I feel
Yeah,
like
and that's
they're
why
serious
I
on
like
that.
Rick Strassman because he was doing like the melatonin studies, then he did the DMT studies, right?
Hmm.
So he's kind of like the pineal gland expert in my book a little bit that I refer to.
Definitely.
And he was saying like even like so with someone with schizophrenia, he was basically suggesting that there's the protein wall is not as effective as like it should be, and it's releasing almost too much DMT into the system,
Wow.
which was how he was saying it. But I'm sure that's probably evolved a little bit because I think he said that like in the 70s or 80s maybe with his
Right.
first book. But yeah, it was really interesting. I was like, so like there's a lot going on with that.
It's fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
The government
the,
shut him down.
I I only say it because I looked it I tapped it into Chat GPT, and Chat GPT refuses to accept the fact that the pineal gland produces DMT, but like everything else shows that it does. So
Yeah.
is there a conspiracy there? I don't know.
I didn't realize it was still like a debatable thing. Honestly. I thought it was fact at this point.
Me too. Me too, believe me. So when I was like trying to cross-reference and do research and stuff, ChatGPT keeps trying to tell me that like it it keeps trying to argue with me, so I had to leave it alone on that subject. But I'm like, there's something weird there. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, there's certain things I think like because I like Rick Strassman a lot, especially with that topic, and like the government had shut him down with his DMT experiments he was doing in the late 70s. And it was because it was proving that there was a lot going on outside of the consciousness of the testees, right? The people who were
Right.
being volunteers.
Hmm.
And no, it was just too much. And I'm thinking, how would the public, inter or react to information like that? Especially, back then, I think sometimes
Yeah,
information is controlled a little bit. And plus, like if everyone realized they had like a mind, like a tiny little superpower, a tad bit with that connection, you'd be
that's
like,
what I
oh,
think.
we're all very connected, even unconsciously like that. It makes you realize, there's a lot going on, and maybe the mind isn't as private as we thought sometimes.
I agree. I agree. Uh, like that could be the path to telepathic communication and telekinesis, and who knows?
Psychic abilities, that was something I was reading with his book that I was reading today. He was saying, and I'm only like probably 20 pages in, but he started out pretty strong, and Rick Strassman was saying in his third book that as mankind, where we're at right now in history, that we really need to start evolving some of those abilities naturally, and that they would help us move forward and make some huge leaps. And he even used the word psychic abilities, basically.
Right.
But it's the idea that like he was a firm believer in it. Now I probably sound like a hippie. You're talking about that, but it was really interesting. And it's
New
good to
age.
be
It is.
open-minded and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I know you don't like, you don't, I would never lump you in the new age category, but obviously a lot of these things
I
were
like to be
brought
the old.
about. No, I mean, I had a whole album called The New Age, so before it was like, before it got corny. This was a while ago, but
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I do think there's something to that. I always say, like, what if instead of the Industrial Revolution, we would have had a spiritual revolution? Maybe instead of phones, we'd be communicating telepathically. Instead of FaceTiming, we might be remote viewing or something. Like, who knows? Maybe we'd be. I mean, if the spiritual revolution advanced as quickly as the technological revolution, maybe we would be pretty close to teleporting instead of using airplanes. I don't know. I know it sounds crazy, but like, you like similar to what we do in the dream realm. I feel like just like in quantum physics, how they realized when you try to, the only effect that you have on a quantum particle is through your intention. They realize this. I'm not sure if you're aware. I've talked about this pretty extensively on my lives in the beginning, but like, they realize that as soon as you focus on a particle, or as soon as you try to measure it, that's what affects it, and that's what puts it into its state. So every quantum particle exists in what they call the superposition, which I was talking about before. That's every possible position that it can exist in. And then once they try to measure it, it pops into position, and wherever they predict it will be is where it will be. So, and then they'll take a particle, they'll split it, they'll separate those two separate. It's one particle, but it's split in two now. As soon as they try to measure one, the other one gets affected, no matter how far away it is, instantaneously. So,
Makes sense, honestly. Yeah.
so So my idea is like, and I don't know if you ever read about Masaru Emoto's Messages from Water, how they like write different words on bottles of water and then take pictures of the molecular structure of that water.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
uh, yeah, yeah, most people have seen it. Like it went like viral and stuff.
Yeah.
But like,
I've heard of
so, yeah, they write love on a bottle, take a picture, and it looks like a beautiful, perfectly symmetrical snowflake. They write like hate on a bottle, and it looks like discombobulated, scattered particles that are not like So like, and then other people have tested that, and what they found that a lot of people who were trying to challenge him didn't get the same results. And then other people who tried to confirm it did get the same results. And what they realized is that it's obviously not the word that you put on the bottle, it's the thoughts that you have when you're putting the word on the bottle.
Makes
So
up
they,
your intention and all that. Yeah.
right, so they realized like if you leave these bottles over longer periods of time and think specific thoughts while holding the bottle or looking at the bottle, that's what has the effect on them. And like that's why they say talk to your plants and love your plants. And then if you think plants are mostly water, we're mostly water, you know, what are our thoughts doing to our bodies, and what are they doing to the plants, you know? And then what are they doing to the people around us?
I guess blessed water really does work then.
Well, yes, in his book, he has a picture of the molecular structure of holy water, and it is beautiful, you
That's cool.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean the same thing with blessing your food, you know, your food has water in it. And so my idea is that like it might be easier for our thoughts to directly affect these things at quantum levels because they're more delicate at smaller states. But if we could increase our mental capabilities, you know, and project our thoughts even stronger, maybe that's how we could manipulate matter directly, just like we do in a lucid dream. Maybe.
Sense. No, that does make sense. Um, Even as an
So,
individual or a mass collective, like you could imagine if the mass collective had that energy all into one big, large
right.
thought, even.
Right.
It would be huge.
I mean, I think everyone's felt it if you've ever been to like a concert or a live show where everyone's there kind of for the same reason and you're all kind of on the same frequency. It's powerful. It's very powerful.
Yeah.
You know?
It really, the mind is powerful. There's a lot going on. Like I do find it very interesting. So like I don't know, people who downplay like, oh, your dreams and things like that. And I'm just like, no, there's so much going on. And as the fact that you could even bring it to the daytime like that a tad bit, you know,
Right.
like,
I mean, I think everything can connect with dreams. And trust me, my girl is always talking about it. And a lot of people think it's ridiculous how much I focus on this stuff. But it's all interconnected, like you always say. It really is.
yeah, everything goes full circle all the time. It's insane. Like everything is kind of speaking the same truth from a different perspective.
I agree. I mean, every religion, every scientific study, you know, everything. I mean, even social studies and the economy can be related to it and equated to it in different ways. Everything. There's an ebb and flow and a frequency and a rise and a fall, and it's all interconnected. And then they all lead back to the most fundamental questions of reality that humans have been searching for since the beginning of our consciousness, you know? Like, what is real? Where do we come from? Joe
Yeah,
Armstrong said, we all have our parts to play and roles. I agree.
yeah, very
I
true.
agree. I mean, if you go along with the Hindu belief of, you know, we're going through samsara and different levels of karmic existence, different karmic levels, you know, that I mean, this could just get, you know, it can go down so many rabbit holes here.
That's why I like do being in the dream lane. It brings up a lot of good questions. And it's funny because even like, so in my sessions, we'll do 45 minutes of dream analysis and then try to make it daytime applications.
Hmm.
But when they're metaphysical and really far out there, we really do talk about belief systems, perceptions of reality, talk about some deep stuff sometimes. And, you know, I don't tell people what to think or believe, but it's a good space to just explore. And like, yeah, we talk about some really crazy stuff. I mean, we got some people who are worried about the different realms and trying to understand the realm themes even. And I'm like, there's just a lot going on.
Yeah, I like how you said with the one guy who was like battling demons all the time, and you told him like stop hanging out in the ghetto. I thought that was great. That was a
Yeah,
great analogy.
it was fun. But even now, it's evolved a bit more to where, again, evolution and belief system, it's, what is bad? It's just something that exists in the ecosystem. So how do we live amongst it or with it type of thing? And, it's funny, but he started showing him compassion instead of it being an internal family system where, because I always say like your internal family system probably mirrors some of that stuff or is creating the attachment to it,
Yeah.
which would make sense. Something broken would be attached to something exteriorly broken.
Right.
But not saying, but it's just weird. But like he was having a dream where there was one in the dream there was one hiding in the closet, and every time he kept going in the closet it got afraid and kept pushing out, and I was laughing. I was like, they feed off the negative, we feed off of love and positivity, so it's like they're almost afraid of the positive or something like that is what we were noticing. But he said, at the end of the day, he was just curious and he wanted to show more compassion and love to them. And I was like, I think you can do whatever you want. I was like, there's no rules per se on that stuff. And I was like, to explore without fear is a good thing.
Yeah, I agree, and I wonder if I wonder if you can cause resistance to certain things just by focusing on them too much, if you know what I mean. Like I don't know, like similar to when I was trying when I would do these lucid dream tests to see if I was having an out of body experience or not. It never worked for me. I can never confirm that it was an out of body experience. And I mean, I did, falsifiable tests. And sometimes I wonder if it was just the fact that I was trying to test it that was causing a resistance that was keeping me from being successful with the test. I wonder.
That is interesting. I always just say it, you just know, or it resonates. Like
I,
people would ask me, like, would you know you're dreaming? And I'm like, I've never, had a trick or a way to confirm, and I've never thought to do that. But like an Inception, the movie Inception type thing, where they
yeah,
get real crazy with it. But like, I was like, no, you just know. I've always just said you just consciously are aware. I realize that might not be everybody. I've had people where it's very alive. Like maybe you're doing the mundane everyday thing and then you wake up the next day and you're like, I thought I did that already, like what is it, that one thing around the house or something, but no, but when it comes to something consciously outside of yourself, like some of my clients will be like, I don't think that was me, and like we'll kind of explore it, and I'm like, if at the end of the day I was like, it resonates with you, like, I mean, we can disconnect from certain aspects of ourselves, but it you kind of just know sometimes, like,
I
it's weird.
appreciate that, and I agree with you, but it bothers me because like that's the same thing that Christians say when they felt like they got when they feel like they talk to Jesus, like when they feel like they know that their God is the true one or something. And I'm not saying that they're wrong, and I'm sorry, I don't want to turn this video into something like that, but like you just know is like because like I said there's ways to test it. Like anyone who feels like they've floated over their own body, you can like hang a tray over your bed and toss up with a bowl in it or something, maybe like a bowl or a tray, toss up some dice and don't look at it. You could even like have someone take a picture or something, and then you
Mm-hmm.
can try to float above your body and look back, and the only way you'll be able to say what was in that tray, you know, if someone can look at the picture and if you can confirm that after you claim to have had your experience, then like something like that would prove it.
People do stuff like that. um,
They, they do, but it's been tested in labs and it's never been confirmed.
they gotta like relax. I know people who do it for fun or
Right,
with amongst friends and stuff, like,
right.
uh,
Like
I
is
used
it
to play
controlled?
around a little bit like that with a couple friends, maybe just a meditation or trying to do it in dreamland, and then we'll go the next day and try to be like, hey, like blah 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 blah.
Hmm.
Some people are better at it than others.
Right, right. I just, well, I wonder if it's the controlled environment of the lab that causes resistance. Because I'm sure, I mean, maybe when you're having an out of body experience, is it a slightly skewed or parallel dimension to this one, or is it this exact dimension? Like that's what bothers me, you know?
Interesting question. I
And
don't know. I've
it's
I always thought through my experiences that I was like in this dimension. Like,
mhm,
because sometimes I'm just like floating around in my room or like stuck on the ceiling, you know what I mean?
mhm,
Or sometimes you are out experiencing things that are clearly a different dimension. Some people feel they experience history or historical events even.
right,
Like the pyramids is a popular one, or being in outer
mhm.
space. Uh, which I mean, they're common things. So I mean, you subconsciously could be dreaming of something like that. But I don't know. It gets pretty interesting. I've had experiences like with my guides and on and off for a long time. And I know some of my clients haven't intentionally tried to work with their guides, but like mine were like at one point earlier this year, they were putting their hands on my eyes and telling me I had to use my third eye. And they did that for like 3 months on and off, like not every night, but like
Wow.
like I didn't ever really see them, but I remember them telling me that they like literally having their hands over my eyes while I'm sleeping, and they told me I had to use my third eye. And after a while, I felt like my eyes were closed, but I was staring at my ceiling. And then like they kind of stopped doing that for a while, and then there was like probably 2 months after that where I felt like randomly in the middle of the night I'm sleeping, my eyes are clearly closed, but I felt like I was looking at my room or staring at the ceiling. But
Right.
that was also a hard one for me because I'm like, okay, I feel like I'm actually doing it. But at the same time, I subconsciously know what my room looks like or what my ceiling looks like, right? So it's
Mhm.
like, am I really? Uh, so I always laughed. I was like, I need to get a digital clock next to my bed. That way I can just kind of confirm it.
Something like that. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's basically what I went through in different ways. And like I said, there I did try to test it in different ways, and it never confirmed it for me. And that's where I was so convinced I was either astrally projecting or just having an out of body experience until I tested it. And then I'm like, okay, these might just be very realistic, vivid, lucid dreams. I don't know.
Yeah.
I've been ignoring the comments, but Dee Dee said something about if you're not using them being in the flow, you'll have to pay a high bill later. That was a few minutes ago. Joe Armstrong said, glad I found y'all because I like this stuff, but I'm not well versed, but I understand most of it somehow without even studying it for long. You might say, okay, cool. Dee Dee said, I think the powers come with a huge responsibility, and using them can backfire heavily. I think the real power is to have the power, but choosing not to use it, or use it just in limited circumstances. Okay, I'm sorry, that was like 7 minutes ago. I've been ignoring the comments, and that is my fault.
That's okay.
Um,
Um,
so- yeah, yeah, go ahead, please.
no, you're fine. I wasn't sure what she was referring to, but because that was a bit ago.
Yeah, yeah, I'm sorry, Dee Dee. I apologize. I will try to just, I really want to, like when you talk, like you say things that I think that I haven't said yet. So like, I love listening to you. Um, so I listened to when I was listening to your conversation with Jeff Randall and how he talked about the silver cord when you're astrally projecting. And we've talked about that before on these lives. And I liked how he said, like, maybe if you expect to see the silver cord, you will. But if you're not even aware of it, then it's not going to be there.
Yeah, I've never experienced the silver cord, but I didn't know to expect it either. So
Exactly. So with that being said, like, when people believe they're astrally projecting, I really believe it's just because I had the experiences of astrally projecting, but I have read about it and the silver cord and all that, and like, but I know that's what I was looking for, and that may have just been me inducing a dream. You know what I mean?
yeah, like prepping your subconsciousness to kind of give you an experience, basically.
Right. So I had the experience of like vibrating and lifting up out of my body, but that and people say that's how you know you that from what I saw, they're like, that's how you know you're lucid dreaming. or that's how you know you're astrally projecting and not lucid dreaming, is because you were vibrating and you lifted, you separated from your body. And I was convinced, and it felt like I was, but then it's like I tell my homie to leave something out on his bedstand overnight and something, and I'll come float over and tell him what was there, or write something down on the notebook, and like it never worked. Never worked.
I've never been able to do anything like that. But when I got into I didn't like hear about astral projecting and all that until later after I was having some of these experiences. And I never felt the vibrating or the stepping out of my body or rolling out thing.
The
Like
roll
it
up,
just,
yeah, the roll out.
yeah, people like, I think maybe people overthink it a tad bit. I think sometimes you just have to think it and it would maybe do it. Like from my experience. But I've noticed that when we try to astral project or practice with friends, like we don't come up with exactly what we want to do. We just kind of set the intention to interact, and we'll have like the same experience, but it'll be slightly different through our perception, which kind of is normal with like, let's say, metaphysical type realm stuff, right? Like
It
I'll
is.
see I'll see from my perspective of this, and that, and they'll be like, oh, I was like that too, but it was more like this, and that. But we were still interacting with each other in
Right.
some way. And I used to disconnect and say it was like my higher self sometimes, which I know is like a disconnecting from myself because like that would be still me. But like I've noticed that we do things unintentionally a lot of the time. So like I don't know. I think it'd be best to not study up on it prior, but just to let it happen organically and then go study things, which
Right.
is
No,
kind of how I've been doing a lot of my stuff. Because like I kind of went into it very like I knew I had crazy dreams, and I knew there was a lot going on, and like even at the beginning, like a lot of like demons were chasing me from dream to dream to dream, and I was going like screw that, I'm going to the next dream, or just phasing into something else type thing.
right.
But no, it's always I think it's better just in general, like even with daytime things, to not prep yourself for something like that, just to let it happen, and then I don't know, and then go study when it does happen.
I hear you. It's just tough for someone that never experienced it, and then they start hearing about it and start studying it and trying to induce it, and then that's where I guess you get those predispositions that might lead to those predetermined experiences. But you're definitely right. The organic way is definitely the way to go.
Yeah. And I've noticed that even in my studies, like just going off of synchronicity of it, right? Like before I got into Carl Jung a couple years ago, I was really having like my own internal things. I was doing my own dream analysis and all of this, and like it's kind of going through like these awakening phases. But I noticed that every time I learned something through myself organically, like literally the next day or later that day, the academic logic, would come through, and I would see it and I'd be like, oh, I was just kind of coming to that conclusion in my own organic way through my own experiences. And then I'll read about it like the next day and be like, oh, well, that's awesome. So I think so for me, I'm glad it happened that way versus feeling like I tricked my subconsciousness into it, because then it would have I don't know. Then I could have like like our ego loves to double check everything. So it would have been maybe harder to believe, or I would have talked myself out of it, or been like, oh no, you did that yourself, blah, blah, blah,
Right,
uh,
right.
doing
At
it to yourself type of thing.
the same time, I had also like read about temporary sleep paralysis or TSP, and I was well aware that that's when you're in the theta state where you're able to fall back into a dream, or they say you can directly astrally project from there, or they say it's a good time to talk with loved ones, when you wake up and you have that sleep paralysis because you're in that foggy, hazy state, in between conscious and unconscious kind of.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
that I always try to think of an exception to every rule. So that's the only reason I always play devil's advocate. So I'm just throwing that out there. But so and that was a case where like I'm glad I studied it beforehand, because my brother would experience it, and he would he felt like there was a demon sitting on his chest or something, and he would wake up hyperventilating and punching and freaking
Yeah.
out. But me, as soon I experienced it, because I read about it quite a bit, I said, okay, this is it. I can do anything right now, and it was great.
That's
So
cool.
that's the only exception. But also, I wanted to say something about what you were saying before about when you and your friends were like astrally projecting and you experienced kind of the same experience but slightly different. I wonder that, that doesn't mean, and this is me arguing with myself kind of, but that doesn't mean that you weren't in the same realm. I feel like our waking reality, we all experience the same world in slightly skewed different ways. People even see colors differently and stuff. So it may
Yeah,
be the same thing kind of, right?
I think that's definitely so. Because,
Okay.
yeah, I've even noticed, like, yeah, that's the same, like, symbolism, the way we perceive reality, everything kind of has, like, we do that a lot. So, like, yeah, I would not argue that at all. That was something I kind of noticed too, just doing my, practicing with other people. It was obvious. And then when I started working with like more of the symbolism and like getting in the shamanic concepts,
Hmm.
it kind of backed it up a little bit too. And I was like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. We're all very much perceiving things on our own.
Yeah, that's the beautiful thing about it. There's for the longest time, humans have always had a fascination with dreams. We've always attributed them to something very powerful and significant. You go back to the most ancient times, they thought they were messages from the gods or messages from our ancestors. And then it wasn't until like relatively recently, since once humanity lost its touch with this with spirituality generally, when they started to think that dreams were kind of just relatively insignificant. And then you get like, that's when Freud came in right around that time and kind of skewed everyone's vision of it. And people, I I feel like dreams have been I feel like they've, for a little while now, they've been devalued in our modern society.
Oh yeah, totally. Like some people have no idea what I do, and they're like, "That sounds interesting, whatever." Like, I'm like, no, there's a lot going on in the human mind, in the archetypes and ancestors and what's going on. Um, no,
Hmm.
and it's all tucked in. That's why I'm like, when I was reading the my book earlier today, actually, he was saying how like if God were gonna hide the truth of life or existence anywhere in the universe, he would have hide it within ourselves because the only people who go inwards or would be in the best hands, right?
Right, right,
You're not going to bury it in the ocean because it could be in the wrong hands, or you're not going to put it
right.
here because people will go get it, and just take it. But if you go internally inwards, that's where you really do find a lot of the truth. And I just love that because it kind of, like I love mythology, I love primitive man history a lot. So it just kind of all, I was like, dude, it's always been there. And then you see it in like world religion a little bit, even in the
Oh yeah,
Christian Bible, dreams were a huge part in like the story.
the
Uh,
Book of Daniel. I mean,
yeah. And like
yeah,
even Mother Mary and Joseph, they had dreams, and the angels would come and give them messages while they're sleeping, things like that.
King David, Isaac. I mean, yeah, there's so much. Yeah, dreams are so relevant in the Bible. I
Yeah. And like visions, we talk about that a lot too.
dreams
Premonition.
and visions.
I was like, that's the cool stuff, I guess, that you could confirm a little bit with more fact because when it actually happens and it's something random that you might not be afraid might happen and happens, but it'd be something just so random. And you're like, I wasn't even emotionally worried about that to be on my mind type thing. And well, here it is.
Right. That's why dream journals are also important, because you can verify a premonition like that.
hmm
I've done
I've
that.
had it. Yeah. So like for me, I had my last one I had was earlier this year, and it's kind of sad because my dog died. But
Okay.
so I had a dream that I was kind of just walking around in my dreams or whatever, I was just like going through the dream phases. I don't always care to control it. But I stopped. I was walking through a hallway and I stopped and was like saw my 4-year-old kind of like laying dead on a chair. And it snapped me lucid because it was like, oh, well, that was something that got my attention. I always say snaps you lucid type thing, right?
Yeah. Oh
And I'm
yeah.
like, okay, huh?
Oh yeah. The light bulb. Yeah.
Yeah, where you're like, okay, this is a dream and that's weird. Hold on. And I like kind of went towards him and like it didn't feel like him and I knew I was dreaming and it was kind of weird, but I felt like I should have picked his body up and just sat there for a minute and been just like, what is going on?
Right.
Well, the next day, my dog died and got ripped up by a neighborhood dog. And I knew that dream was weird and I wasn't really overthinking it. But then after the next day, I was like, okay, I felt like it was my child, but it wasn't my child in the dream. And then the
Right.
next day, my dog died, and I was like, oh, this makes sense, even in a symbolic way. It was like my child, my dog, but it's not my child. And
Right.
so I'm just glad it wasn't my actual son.
Of
But like I
course.
remember feeling in the dream, trying to analyze it and just be like, okay, I know it doesn't feel like him, but it is him. So it was coming through in a symbolic way. So it wasn't direct premonition, but it in itself it stood out a lot. And then I've had them where they're more direct, like almost to the T. Again,
Yeah.
with another dog a couple years ago. So I don't know why I keep having them about my dogs, but
There's something to that. Stay on that.
yeah,
Keep looking for patterns in that.
it's
That's
interesting.
interesting. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I had a dream that my grandfather had died, but in the dream I was in a burning house, and my grandfather was Bruce Lee, because I was fascinated with Bruce Lee at the time, but I was young. I was like 6 or 7 or something, and I got woken up that night, and because we had to go to the hospital because my grandpa was in the hospital, and then he ended up dying like the following morning. But in the dream, it was definitely him. It was definitely my grandpa, but it wasn't him. You know, it was Bruce Lee. It looked like
Yeah.
Bruce Lee, but it was my grandpa. So
As
yeah,
someone you admired and loved.
right. So okay, so that kind of brings me into another question I wanted to ask you, because I've had multiple people ask me how they can contact their loved ones through dreams. And I'm not, I try to tell people, like, I don't try to position myself as an expert in anything except for maybe, I'm not an expert in anything. Maybe I'm an expert in curiosity. I'm an expert in curiosity for
I
sure.
like that.
So, like, so I've tried to, through different like guided meditations and setting intentions and writing exercises, I've tried to explain how people might be able to contact a loved one. But my question is like, I think we've all, or I know a lot of people have had dreams where they're talking to a loved one, a lost loved one, you know, and a lot of times it's not that, it doesn't look like that person, but it is the energy of that person.
Yeah.
So how much of that is that person or a piece of that person's frequency, and how much of it is just a mental recreation of them, and is there a difference at the metaphysical level? I know it's not an easy question, but
Yeah, because you can just miss them and your subconsciousness will pull it out, right? And you could just be dreaming of the people that you had loved.
it can feel real. You know, your
But
brain can't convince you it's real.
yeah, and so for me, I always have dreams with my grandmother, and I've had them both experiences, and I kind of know when it's just me dreaming of her or when she's coming to visit because it's very different when I know she's visiting. Like that's one of those things that like you just know. I couldn't tell you why exactly. It's just maybe it is the vibrant and the energy of that person and knowing that they're consciously not my consciousness, especially if you're lucid dreaming. You could make the person smack themselves or, do something. It's because it's in your reality. You control that reality. But when you can't control it. So, but not everyone's being lucid in those moments either.
True,
So like, you know,
true.
um, so this is how I've described it in the past. If you want to have conversations with past loved ones, do it during the day. Just talk to them. The phone works both ways, right? You can't just expect them to come to you all the time. And I'm sure they do. And some people are just blocking it a tad bit. But like it's the idea that it's not just existing in the nighttime and while we're sleeping. It also exists during the day. So like I had a workshop like a month ago where we were talking about it with my Wednesday night girls. And I was like, if you want to experience somebody in your dreams, experience them during the day too. Like every time I see something that reminds me of my grandmother, or even like a smell, like, green peppers, right? Something common. But it reminds me of her. And if it's a trigger for a memory or a feeling, I'll just tell her I love her. Or sometimes I just talk to her, right? I think when we're trying to interact with them, even in the daytime, it makes it easier to experience that at night too. Um, but like sometimes you will just have like an emotional like expression within your own subconsciousness with that. But like so the night my grandmother died a couple years ago, before I went to bed, like I was really close with her and I wasn't like freaking out or sad. Like I have a pretty decent relationship with death, but I was just, like I missed her, but I was glad that she was, better off. And I remember like having a very extreme dream where I like somehow appeared at heaven's gates. I don't remember how I got there exactly. And it's just like this white energy everywhere. That's how I explain God to be, just this white energy, because I've seen it a few times in past dreams. But
Definitely God. Definitely
right,
God
yeah.
energy, for sure.
Yeah, and I know other people on Facebook after I've had those dreams that say the same thing about God. So I'm like, okay, so that would, be this idea of going in. But like there were these like gold archways with no walls or anything. It's just like the archway. And my grandmother was standing there waiting for me. And like she just had her arms out. She gave me a big hug, and I remember hugging her back, and like she held my hand and I like walked her through. But I don't have any memory after walking through. And I don't remember waking up directly at that moment either. So I think it was just like I think we block our memories sometimes.
We do.
So I'm like,
We
okay.
do.
So I don't remember walking through it, but I do remember walking her into it, but not like seeing what was going on the other side necessarily. Um, and that felt very real. So like for me in that experience, like I felt like that was real, and that she was waiting for me, and I walked her through. And then I've had dreams where she'll be in the background of dreams, or she'll just be in the dream, or I'm in her house, we're having, and like those just feel like regular dreams to me. But I've had a handful of dreams where she comes and talks to me or hugs me, and like those felt very real. Kind of like that first dream with her. And yeah, that's what I would say. You kind of just feel like you kind of know. There is a certain like energy about it. It's not like when you're just symbolically going through the dream phases like normal, they do feel like normal dreams and like whatever. But when there's something metaphysical going on, there's like a certain intensity to it, if you're lucid or not. Um, yeah,
I
there's a lot
agree.
going on.
I agree with you. I feel like some of that, like, I mean, we know that when the brain is experiencing these dreams, especially vivid dreams or lucid dreams, that the brain activity is exactly the same as it would be when we're awake. So to
Yeah.
our brains, it is real, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Our brains can't distinguish the difference. It doesn't need the external sensory input to have its internal response and reaction and experience. So it all makes me wonder. Also, I know you had somewhat of a religious upbringing. I know you're not religious. I'm not. I would never try to tie you to anything. But like your
We
parents
don't know
were.
what's like now.
I mean, I'm not gonna ask you if you follow Jesus and if you're a witch that practices dark magic or anything like that. But I saw that interview. I thought that was hilarious. But
Oh, thank
bless
you.
his
I
soul.
didn't know. I was like, that's funny because someone actually asked me that once.
Yeah, no, you handled that so well. I love the way you worked on through that so well, so elegant and
Yeah, I was like,
kind.
I did not want to talk about my belief system, at least with him. I'll maybe talk about it with other people, but I could tell he was not the one.
I feel like a lot of it's that old school mentality, like if you don't follow Jesus, then you must be influenced by the devil. Like some people don't, it's pretty black and white to some people, which is cool.
Yeah.
And That's fine.
I, I call them all ascending masters, and like I think there's a lot of them. I don't think Jesus was the only one, and I don't think he was necessarily preaching that way. I think that's a whole nother. There's a lot to the Bible. I
That
do
is a
respect
whole.
it though, and I think that it could still be helpful to someone's soul. I'm not gonna say it's not.
I agree.
I just I study them all. I like them all.
Me too. Me too, honestly. Especially, are you familiar with, I think it's like Aboriginal Australians. They have a belief that all of their loved ones live in that the afterlife is a dreamland. They call it like, they call it something along the lines that has to do with the word dreaming or something. And they believe that our dreams exist in the same realm as where the dead loved ones are and stuff. Like ancient or Aboriginal Australian mythology is like incredible.
That sounds cool. That's because they were going off of their own experiences and trying to describe it the best they could. So like I'm sure they were going off of some like data and their own experience with it.
Right. I agree. I agree. I agree. Cultures all over the world. And I appreciate all religions just about, like there might be, but I really do.
Yeah, there might be a few
Um,
kooky ones out there or
like yeah,
something, but
some of the ridiculous ones, obviously. But like I like how you when you said before, like I think you said what is bad. You were saying forget what we were talking about when you said it. And
oh,
like someone
humans and ecosystem a tad bit, yeah.
right, right. And we know like someone asked me this question just the other day. He asked me if I believe in universal truths. And, and I told him I do. And he was trying to tell me like, so is stealing is wrong. Do I believe that stealing is wrong and that that's a universal truth? And like, I don't believe that's a universal truth. Like, I believe in universal laws. The only things, and I believe there's an exception to every rule, and there's some rules with no exceptions, like that rule, which is like the paradox of reality. I don't know, but like the good and bad, I don't believe that there's good and that there's bad. I mean, it's all perceptions, and there's dark and there's light, and you could call it what you want to, but like it's all necessary for existence. So
Yeah,
I forget where I was going with this. I had a point actually, but I completely lost my train of thought. I'm sorry. um,
fine. Kind of going off of what is good and bad. And I do agree with the universal law thing. Like I always kind of stand by like you don't mess around with free will necessarily or manipulate free will. But I've always noticed like when you look at I like to take my truth from nature or my lessons of truth from nature. Like if it just be watching the insects around me and the birds in the yard, the cat eating the mouse. Like is the cat evil because it caught the mouse or ate it or the dog killed the cat type thing? Like at the end of the day, nature is kind of what it is. And I think we exist in an ecosystem that is very natural. Um,
I
someone once
agree.
referred to demons as having gnats in the house.
Right. Right.
Oh, okay.
I keep ignoring the comments here too. Joe Armstrong said he'll be back on in a few. Good stuff, y'all. If you're still going, in a few, I'll hop back on. My sister said something happened with her and Grandpa too, with a dream, a premonition. And Joe Armstrong said it glitched when you mentioned angels. That was like 13 minutes ago. I'm sorry. You know what? Usually I do better keeping up with the comments, but I want to listen to you. I'm trying to be fully engaged.
That's fine. You said you didn't have the big screen either, which would give it, yeah,
Yeah,
a
it's made
second
it.
screen.
Usually I have it right there and I can just glance over and it's nice and big. So I'm just like squinting. Cliff said nurture nature something something. Yeah, I mean he reset it in Spanish.
Ah,
Yeah. So okay, I know you're tired. I don't want to drag this out too much longer. I don't know how much longer you got in you, but anytime you want to go, let me know. I just want to just one more thing, one or two more things. Okay, I'm sorry.
You're fine.
Um,
I had a feeling we were gonna go over.
yeah, I'm so sorry. This is it's hard for me. There's so much to talk about, and like I want to interview you. I don't want to be the one. Like I said, I don't want to be the one talking. But I also just want to have conversations with you because uh, so we got a question. I forgot. Someone wanted me to ask you a question. Let me find it here. Um, okay, so my boy Johnny, his mother, saw that we were gonna do this live, and she wanted me to ask you. She said, if you don't mind, I would love to ask you this question from her.
Go for it.
She said, occasionally she has dreams where she's running away from someone or something, and she wakes up exhausted. She can't always remember the dreams, except that she's running from something. How can she figure this out without being able to remember the dream?
Emotional attachment to it. Um, and something like that where it's reoccurring, it's probably an internal family system dream, is what I would call it. I mean, I don't know the context, and it's either it's got it. I don't like just interpreting dreams without knowing what's going on in that person's life and
Well, so I'll give
doing
you
some.
some context because I agree with you. You're definitely right. And yeah, like it bothers me because it could go in so many different directions depending on what she's been experiencing and what her past is. But one one thing I do know, and again, I haven't really talked to her like face to face in so many years. I used to go to her house when I was a little kid, but I know she like relatively recently, I think it was in the past year or so, lost her husband, and they were married, forever. And she's still living in that same house and stuff. And uh, her sons, I believe, are moved out. They're older now. So like I don't know if that has something to do with it somehow.
Maybe. I don't know what their grieving was like, but I know that when we psychoanalyze ourselves into different parts, we tend to run from the exiled aspects of ourselves. So she could be running from parts of herself or an emotional thing. And it sounds like it's probably more emotional, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's like an internal family system dream as well. Those are really common. So that would kind of be my guess, just as a guess.
Right, I agree. Do you, I mean, don't you think I would say like I would recommend that she should try to start remembering her dreams, and there's ways that she can do that. But
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Be as creative as you want. Sometimes just being aware and putting intention behind it, like, oh, I'm going to start doing that. And when you remember it during the day, I always say there's memory triggers.
mm,
Um, but like just even trying to journal and putting the intention on that alone helps because sometimes when you sit down and you start writing it, you'll start remembering more things and it just kind of resurfaces the memory a tad bit.
it
And I would
does.
say like definitely keep track of how you feel during the dream and after the dream. A lot of dreams on that level or have a lot of emotional attachments of what's going on internally. So it's good to pay attention to your emotions about it.
Yeah, I basically said everything you just said in another video. I went pretty deep on all of that, ways, different methods to remember your dreams. And
Hmm.
I would always recommend that to anyone. And
Yeah,
but I noticed even if you're not fully successful in remembering your dreams, it'll help you. You'll be better at interpreting the emotions when you wake up. Even if you don't remember the exact visuals, you'll still get
yeah.
better at just thinking about it, and surrounding yourself with things related to it. And yeah, so your advice is golden.
Thanks. Yeah, I had a session last night where we were kind of working it out because it was a very random dream, kind of out of character dream.
Okay.
Um, it took us a minute to pick it apart, but it was the emotions. It wasn't so much about the symbolism in that aspect, but what was going on in her daytime and how it was emotionally making her feel vulnerable, afraid, not being able to get help. Like yelling out for help, no one could hear type thing, and it really represented what was going on with her physical health and how it was making her feel emotionally, and how her subconsciousness took some really extreme symbolism to represent how she felt about that. And I'm like, yeah.
Interesting.
And when we try to put things off to the side and not like ignore it and be like, oh no, I'm fine, and we try to brush it off and not actually deal with those emotions, they can get really intense in the symbolic representation. I've had that before in my own, and it felt like an internal battle sometimes where, I'm like, no, I don't know what's going on, and you kind of fight with yourself a little bit.
Me too.
It
Me too. Definitely.
showed. I was like, your dreams will tell all. I was like, when your consciousness goes to bed, your subconsciousness comes out to play.
Yeah. No, I agree 100%. Uh,
Mm.
someone it bothers me because some people really look at this and they're like, they equate it to like people looking for meaning in tea leaves or something, and they're like, you're just giving meaning when there's none there. But it has been proven and like tested that like certain meanings do represent certain things, and like it's been tested scientifically now with all different types of cool tests that they do. So like I wonder if her dream is maybe her not wanting to face some aspect of herself or some aspect of her reality that she seems to be running away from. I don't know.
That that's kind of what I'm guessing. Yeah, it's running away from something, if it be emotional or something that actually happened. Maybe it is like part of the grieving a little bit, or
Mhm.
coming back to herself a tad bit on some of that. But that's why I'm like, it's definitely an internal family, is how I'll refer to it, or a metaphorical dream. But
Right, right.
uh,
Oh,
it's kind of normal. A lot of people
okay, so
do not view themselves in that way, so that it confused them when they deal with it in dreams because they're like, "What is this?" It's like
mhm.
it's you chasing yourself or running away from yourself. Like, there's a lot going on there.
Definitely is. I think it definitely is sometimes. And like I know it's tough to put a direct meaning to directly try to interpret a dream, but sometimes they are so obvious.
Yeah, like a lot of them are so popular. And it's funny, like, getting lost in an airport, feeling you're going through a maze, getting lost in a city. Uh,
I
those are
think
popular
the
ones.
mansions, always trying to
The
escape.
mansion, yeah.
Yeah.
I always say houses tend to represent our internal a little bit.
Hmm.
It's funny how we kind of just do that a lot of time. Like, I won't sit here and say symbolism is always black and white, but those ones tend to represent like something you're experiencing in the day, if it be a project or something you're doing, or
Right.
even emotionally, or just even on a large scale of going through life, like being lost in the ocean, things like that, or lost in space.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Popular themes. I know when I was, going through probably the hardest part of my depression phases, I kept having dreams about being lost in space or the ocean, feeling this very lost in a very large space type thing, or afraid of it, and that's
Definitely.
that's popular. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it
Uh,
makes sense. There are rules. Of course, there's exceptions to every rule, but there's still rules generally. I agree with you.
I just, and maybe if it's not a rule, but it's a bit ironic. I'm
Right.
like, we're,
Right.
we're just so human, that lost in the ocean feeling, that's something we must all experience in certain parts of our life, or however it may be. Um, and like some symbolism is just so common that we just know it in the daytime, and
Mhm.
maybe we already connect it that way consciously, so our subconscious will use it too.
Yeah, and intuitively, I feel like people do connect them, even if they don't like consciously realize it sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, it's just wild. It's like even when you look at the mass collective, like the archetypes and how they interact with us individually, like
Mhm.
that is so on point a lot of the time and similar. So it's crazy. It's weird. There's a lot going on.
Yeah,
Archetypes are really interesting.
the archetypes are something I like briefly touch on in almost every live, and I have yet to really go deep with them. But like one day I will. I know a lot of the listeners understand what we're referring to. At least most of my regular people here.
Yeah.
My sister said she has to go to sleep. Thank you both. It was great. Good night. I love you, sister. Thank you. Good night.
Yeah, sleep well.
Dream on.
Dream well. Don't forget to journal.
Yeah, yeah, yes, the journal, man. I keep trying to tell people. And I haven't even been following my own advice lately just because life's been so crazy and work every day and I get up so early. But I will get back to journaling again.
I go back and forth with it. I'd noticed now I tend to analyze my dreams right after I dream, and then I'll even forget it after, like if I go back to sleep, which is funny. But like I noticed that I'm always analyzing, and I've even been experiencing myself analyzing dreams while I'm in the dream.
Wow.
It's getting a little ridiculous. It's just kind of like second nature now.
Wow, that's completely meta. Like, yeah, wow.
You're like, what does this mean? This is, and I'm like, yeah. And then sometimes I'll forget how I analyzed it. And I'm like, well, it's in the file cabinet somewhere.
Right, right.
It'll come
What
back when it's used, when needed.
That's interesting. Yeah. I was listening to some people who were talking about like dream studies and stuff, and this guy who, and I've done it too. I've like tried to write songs in my dreams, and then I try to repeat the lines in my dreams, and then wake up and write them down. And it has worked for me, but there's been times where like I'm dreaming, and like someone's talking to me. It might be like, I've had different figures come to me. Uh, all types of stuff. But I've had them tell me things, and I go to write it down in the dream because I'm aware that I'm dreaming, and I know that I'm not gonna remember it. So I'm like, okay, let me write this down. This is great information. I'm dreaming right now. I don't want to forget this. So let me write it down so I'll have it in the morning,
Yeah.
Obviously, I wasn't very logical because I wake up and there's nothing written down the next day, but you know.
However we need to. I know, like some of my clients, because it's basically their homework to keep a dream journal and, like if take a picture or email it to me type thing. Or
Okay.
even they'll do like voice memos. They'll wake up in the morning. And I've been known to do that a little bit too, where it's
Right.
something, because like I've been going through a lot of changes in my life. So a lot of my dreams have been a lot of emotional processing. But I've also had some other weird experiences that I haven't had in a long time that are negative. So I was like, okay, um, I can see how there's vulnerability in some of that. So it was interesting. And like there's a lot, like Carl Jung will even say, like, if you're going through like changes in your life, and like a lot of current groups will talk about it, like you do become vulnerable for like negative things to happen when you're caught kind of in a weak spot. So like that's something I've been experiencing myself a tad bit. So it's been very chaotic, and like the dreams feel like they're rushing in almost too fast, and they're long, they're going around and like this kind of emotional circle in a symbolic way. So it's
Mm.
sometimes I try not to focus on the details so much, but just be like, okay, which aspect of myself is this, what is it trying to say, and just get the meat of it really to be at least applicable type of
Yeah, yeah, some way you can utilize it and understand it. Yeah,
thing. Because at the end of the day, you just want to hear yourself, you know.
right, right. So can you dream with me for a minute about a world where these topics get more widespread, where people like like you may be the spark that ignites the flame in our modern society for spreading awareness on dreaming and things like that. And like I imagine a world not so far off in the future, hopefully that our children can experience where the study of dreams and the incorporation of like metaphysics and psychology and the occultic and esoteric and all of those things kind of come together to study and work with dreams, and maybe like maybe it can get put in the textbooks a little bit more. Maybe there can be actual academic studies dedicated to dream therapies, to help PTSD and people with anxiety and people with insomnia, and maybe specific dream therapists can solve certain ailments for people in a more scientific way. And can we get the schools to accept that? With the way school systems are changing, especially since COVID and all that, like, can we make that breakthrough collectively?
I think it is happening. From what I understand, there are some schools, not many, that are kind of putting more thought into that. Um, Obviously, Jungian groups are like all over that crap, and they've been for a while.
Yeah, they're
Um,
trying.
yeah, they've been. I was like, to take credit for that would be ridiculous. But
No,
like,
I know what you mean. He definitely might have been the spark, but like it's
he
been a
was a
small
huge,
ember for a
yeah.
long time. He's
He brought it all together, that where it made sense for Western culture to at least kind of listen to. Maybe not immediately, but later. Now people are listening. But like even then, like I mentioned Carl Jung to people, and they're like, "Oh, I had a course on that, but it was like this quick little tiny chapter or nothing, and they don't really remember a lot of it. So it's never really highlighted. And a lot of people find Freud to be more right, which I'm like, man,
corporeal, more
Freud is such
corporeal.
a crap. He just goes in circles and avoids it, and he's in denial. And like, from my experience, a lot of the time he just takes it back to his mom or something, or like he's he just I don't know. I'm not a fan of Freud. I was like, I think he keeps skipping over the bush because he doesn't want to deal with it a little bit, or doesn't know how to process it for like
Right.
Western culture at least.
I
But
agree, and that's probably because of his own issues. I think it's pretty obvious.
yeah,
But also we have to acknowledge the fact that like prior to Freud, kind of like I was saying before, like people thought that dreams were just random synapses firing off in the brain, and that they had little meaning. They were just kind of like remnants of our memories, sort of. And for a long time, a lot of people, especially like in the Western culture, weren't taking dreams seriously. They didn't believe there was any deeper meaning to them. And then Freud actually did bring it to the academic field to start looking for deeper meanings in dreams. At least he made that breakthrough.
yeah, and he brought us Carl Jung technically too, because
Exactly.
Carl Jung
Carl
was
Jung
20
really
years
did.
younger than him. He used to study under him
Right.
until they started disagreeing on certain aspects.
Which
So,
also may have drove Carl Jung crazy. But yeah.
yeah, it's funny. They have a random relationship, kind of like father and son a tad bit, with how they probably disagreed and talked crap a little bit and came back to be friends.
Right.
But they keep building onto it, and like even today, there's a lot of people who will use Carl Jung as the base foundation, and they'll build off of it. Like the internal family system is totally a Carl Jung thing. Psychoanalyzing yourself into different aspects like that, like it's kind of Jungian flavoring on that one too.
Oh, completely.
Yeah,
Completely. And
and
there's
then
all types of books written about that.
yep. And then like so that was one of my favorites when I came across it very randomly, and I was like, "Oh my God, I wish I knew this a couple years ago when I was analyzing myself because I was kind of picking up on it, but I wasn't to that extent." So I was like, this makes way more sense now how to view certain dreams where it was coming out, like, going back to my childhood home and things like that, or experiencing things from childhood that would be like an inner child expression, right?
Right.
For example. But no, there's a lot going on, and Jungian groups get really out there. They definitely add like the world culture as a whole
Hmm.
and like really big perspective. And like, I mean, I just know of just even just scrolling through some stuff, like there's a lot of cool stuff going on, and it's never ending. They're always kind of currently developing. So
Yeah.
like, you can't really credit it all to Carl Jung necessarily, but
No.
with the modern day. But he was the base foundation that helped our society currently today kind of pull up newer and evolve it. So, and it's important. So I think we're going to continue always doing that, especially now that we've got the science kind of backing it up too,
You do.
and quantum physics.
And the
And quantum physics is
quantum
a
physics.
whole nother ball game on that. It's really cool. So like, yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff going on.
Yeah, I hope, I hope one day, because I have family members that struggle with mental health. I think we all do in different ways at different times in our life. But like I have some that really struggle with it, and like I wish I could help them. Like psych meds aren't the way. I think most of us understand that now. It was a hard lesson to learn.
Yeah,
Not to
it's
say
important.
I'm not saying they can be beneficial in certain ways. I must say, but
I always say, like, if you're freaking out and you need to calm down, maybe it would be good for a little bit so you process certain things. But I don't think it's supposed to be permanent. Like, and from what I understand, they made antidepressants to try to help PTSD, and it didn't even help PTSD. So then they started treating it for other ailments and stuff.
right, right. Yeah, yeah. I've
I
had
gotta.
dreams.
There's a ghost behind me. Just kidding. It's my son. He just woke
Okay,
up.
okay.
I may need to go in a few minutes because,
That's fine. Thank you.
yeah, he's gonna demand my attention now. But no, this was a good conversation.
I
Okay.
appreciate you so much. And yeah, that's great. You have an amazing night. You go take care of your boy there, and I should go see what the kids are doing. I'm sure they're sleeping, but I appreciate your time so much, and if I could do anything to get you on in the future, again, I will. I'll make sure I have my stuff together better.
Yeah, I would say there's always so much to talk about. So this was a lot of fun, and I'm down to do another one.
Thank you so much for your time. You are a beautiful soul.
Thank you. I enjoy this work. I'm glad I woke up to a true calling, I guess, in that sense. It's cool.
We're all glad that you did. Trust me.
Okay, well, enjoy your night because he's asking for a blanket. And he's my grouchy one. He's gonna get mad at me. So,
Okay, I'm signing out. Thank you, everybody.
all right,
Everyone have a good night.
good one. Thank you guys. Bye.
Bye.